Hey guys, welcome to another rigorous Crash Course World History video. Today we'll be discussing the rigorous court case of Dartmouth versus Woodward versus the state of New Hampshire. It's confusing. Let's discuss. The university was established prior to the U.S. Revolution by King George III via a royal charter in 1769, and as a result, the king had decreed that there would be a self-perpetuating board of trustees. This was essentially a legal contract between the king and the trustees. The charter also gave the trustees land and a structure to build their university upon. Anyway, the college had remained a strictly private institution with its board of trustees overseeing all affairs. Ironically, this major political discussion on states' rights and the rights of a state to nullify a contract actually stemmed from a, get this, religious disagreement between the president of the university, John Wheelock, and his board of trustees.
However, in 1816, the state government of New Hampshire decided that they would amend the Constitution to place Wheelock back in power as the president of the university.
The trustees then sued Woodward, John Wheelock's secretary, and then went on to lose in state courts, but take the matter to the Supreme Court, where the final verdict would be decided.
The school was understandably mad because this essentially stripped their private institution of all its power and gave the entire power to the state and the governor at the time. And the governor had reinstated the deposed president, John Wheelock, and this straight infuriated them on. The board of trustees were understandably unhappy. I mean, how would you feel if the state could just dictate your entire curriculum and then strip your authority away and then have the final say in everything? Actually, you wouldn't be surprised because that's how we do things now, but yeah, thanks Logan. This was pretty important because schools like Harvard and Yale were also acting on pre-revolutionary charters and therefore contracts, so could they be subject to similar treatment? This proved to be an issue. I mean, luckily for us, we have the Founding Fathers, the greatest bunch of heroes the Americas have ever seen. The Founding Fathers, knowing and foreseeing the issue, had this to state in Section 1, Article 10 of the Constitution. No state shall pass any law impairing the obligation of contracts. This essentially means what the state of New Hampshire was doing was unconstitutional according to the Constitutional Convention and the Founding Fathers.
Since the royal charter was essentially a contract between the king and the trustees of Dartmouth College, this meant it was protected under the Constitution. Whether or not the ruling government was the United States at the time, it was still a binding legal document and a contract. So therefore, the state of New Hampshire was acting unconstitutionally when they amended the clauses in their contract. And this started the Civil War. Logan just informed me that this did not cause the Civil War, and I'm understandably disappointed. I would have liked to talk about something interesting for a change. Anyways, in 1819, the case was brought before the Supreme Court. Enter the man, the myth, the legend, John Marshall. After that magnanimous introduction, you can assume that John Marshall is involved in the case. And indeed he was. He was the Chief Justice at the time and oversaw all the proceedings. Now a little bit about John Marshall. John Marshall was a Federalist, and he asserted the power of the judicial branch in many important court cases. He served as Chief Justice from 1801 to 1835. This was not the first time Chief Justice John Marshall had dealt with this issue. Some 9 years prior, in 1810, he dealt in Fletcher v. Peck, which dealt with the same issue regarding land sales. John Marshall was not the only prominent historical figure involved in the case. In fact, Daniel Webster oversaw the arguments for the defense. Daniel Webster attempted to garner support for the trustees by portraying the college as a small and homely college that was struggling to achieve the American dream, just like everyone else. Regardless of any testimony, the final decision came to John Marshall, and he decided this. The state had no right to interfere with the contract as per Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. This was significant, not because it hadn't been done before, because it had. It was significant because it was the reaffirmation of judicial review and the reassertion of what had been stated in Fletcher v. Peck. And by reasserting the power of judicial review to the judicial branch, John Marshall also reinforced the power of the federal government over state legislature.
Oh, it's time for the open letter? An open letter to John Marshall.
John Marshall, you established the power of judicial review. You made it so the federal government had some say over states. But could you consider writing it into your will? I'm just kidding. But really, the way you asserted your power, c'est magnifique. Sincerely yours, the penultimate greatest person on the planet, Aiden Boyko. Anyway, the court case was still very important, but the consequences of the court case were even more so. The states realized that they were weaker under the Constitution than they had initially realized. They felt initially like they had way more power than they actually had the right to exercise. As a result, states began passing laws to make themselves stronger and constitutional amendments as well that allowed them to edit charters and have more power because they were fearing the growing encroachment of the federal government. This could quite honestly be seen as a prelude to the battle that was about to be joined about states' rights and the federal government that would result inevitably into the Civil War. So that joke we made about the Civil War resulting from this isn't all that far-fetched. Well, not exactly this case, but I mean John Marshall's whole shebang on strengthening federal government and judicial review, but that's besides the point. Shebang. Oh, it's time for the mystery document? Let's do it!
This is the mystery document. We all know how this works. I have to decipher this document, and if I get it right, I'm fine. If I get it wrong, I get necked. This court can be insensible neither to the magnitude nor delicacy of the question. The validity of the legislative act is to be examined, and the opinion of the highest law tribunal of a state is to be revised. An opinion which carries with it intrinsic evidence of the diligence of the ability and integrity with which it was performed. On more than one occasion, this court has expressed the cautious circumspection with which it approaches the consideration of such questions, and has declared that in no doubtful case it would pronounce the legislative act to be contrary to the Constitution. But the American people have said in the Constitution of the United States that no state shall pass any bill or attainder ex post facto law or law impairing the obligation of contract. Was it Webster? I don't know.
It was John Marshall.
Go figure.
Ow. Regardless of my failure and ineptitude, the Constitution was upheld by John Marshall and the Supreme Court, who ruled in favor of the trustees of Dartmouth College. This showed yet again that John Marshall and his judiciary branch would uphold the Constitution no matter what. And even though states would start passing amendments and laws to strengthen their power, it still stood that the judicial branch would assert its authority over the Constitution. I mean, imagine if the state of Texas just could come into your house and say, yo, your marriage license is invalid. Too bad. But thanks to John Marshall and the judiciary branch, that won't happen. And everything he did in this case and others pretty much asserted the authority of the federal government over the state. So you can rest assured your wonderful marriage will not be ended just because you're state. It'll be ended by a divorce court because you're a horrible person. On that note, everybody, have a great day. Shebang.